Yo, what's going on, everybody? This is your boy Rob One. Oh man, let me tell y'all, man. Y'all know me, man. I don't like to start late. I just had some technical difficulties this evening, man. I don't even feel right. You know what I'm saying? Because I never start the show this late. I have my guest waiting for me. She's so patient. And so I can't wait to get her on and we're going to talk to her. And I just wanted y'all to know, man, that y'all know I got to give thanks to all the people that download the audio version of this platform because it's very important that people that really take the time out to listen to us each and every week and everything that the guests talk about. Because that's why I say I get up here and I talk to some of the world's most interesting people. And I mean that, right? So look, giving thanks to all the people that download the audio version. Thank y'all so much. Double salute to y'all. Also, want to thank all the sponsors. Y'all know I got to give it up. Give it up to y'all know Spartan Conversation merch is out there. Y'all can hit me up on my link tree or y'all can hit me up personally and we can make that happen for y'all. And I could get that to y'all. Also, want to give a shout out to V Atlas Wine. I am a brand ambassador for V Atlas Wine, and we will be having the great wine tasting coming up soon. And for those of y'all that may be interested and coming through and joining the networking event and being a part of it, y'all know what to do. All y'all gotta do is hit us up on our email, which is spartanconversation@gmail.com. And then in the subject line, just put a networking night, wine tasting, and then make sure that I get you all that information because it's going to be great. It's going to be a lot of different businesses in there. And the idea is to bring, you know, different people in the business market together, right? Because the one thing that we always find out is that everybody needs marketing. That's the most important part of most businesses, right? Is the marketing part. And the hardest part is, or the most expensive part is that. So having people that can help cross promote each other's brand is so dope. So make sure that y'all hit us up at sparkingconversation@gmail.com if you guys want more information on that. All right. So y'all know how this week is gone. It's been crazy. Congress, no, Senate, Senate. All right. So look, y'all, look, I've been telling y'all for the longest time, right? That a lot of times people won't go get the information for themselves. You know what they'll do? They'll just hear certain things and then they'll just go with that and that's it. Whatever sounds good, whatever feeds their flesh, right? And gives them an emotion where they could feel something. Right. And then a lot of people have displaced anger. Let's just call it what it is, right? Displaced anger. They don't know where they want to put their anger at. So they pick and choose what they want to do because sometimes I don't understand. Like, yo, everybody walks around with a smartphone, but then you won't get smart with it. Like, it's so much information for you guys to figure out. Now, I want y'all to think about this. It's so many people that's been in this world labeled crazy because of what they've seen in this world, right? What they've seen, what they've experienced, what they've had the privilege of even, witnessing. And they've been called crazy. And so for now, since people can't figure out how to control it, now they want to bring it to the public. So the Senate has had the live for any of y'all that want to go in there because I watch Senate meetings for a lot of reasons. Having this platform is the reason why I have to really go out there and get the news and get the source. I cannot just go by what they telling us on the news platforms. That ain't it. And we know how that's been going, and we know that's supposed to be getting ready to change. So we'll see how news starts to be a little bit more honest because they have to compete with platforms like this. Why? Because this is where the information comes from. We give it to y'all. Like, I'm not here to make people pick and choose. My thing is to give the information out. Now, what you do with it is what you do with it. But it should be open up for you to say to yourself, listen, I need to go figure it out for myself. Right? We told y'all about life-changing situations. There's so many people that I hear complain about their jobs or complain about the things that they go through each and every day, or they don't have enough money for things, inflation, this, that, and the third. But they still won't do the one thing that everybody else is doing, even those that's on the top, is they working together. A lot of times when it comes down to all the things that people are complaining about, you still don't come together. Now think about this, y'all. Could this be? Now I want y'all to put it in the comments if y'all understand where I'm coming from and not. Now could this be? Like a lot of companies, right? They allow people to work from home. And for so many people, they feel like that's a convenience, right? Most people have a hybrid schedule or they work from home completely. But then they wonder why their salaries are not matching inflation. Prices are going up and all these other things. Now, why would you think that that wouldn't be the main thing? Most people don't know how to come together as a group in order for them to get the things that they need because they always look at the conveniences that they're given. Most people are selfish in that way. So for people who get to work from home or get to work hybrid, they're not even going to get together and mention anything about they deserve more pay because for them it's like, yo, if you think about the company's looking at it like, listen, yo, I'm letting y'all stay home, y'all saving on gas, y'all don't have to pay for food, y'all don't have to, right? You know what I'm saying? So that's their way of helping you deal with inflation. If you kind of think about it, is the reason why they're not giving y'all more money. But that still doesn't help with the price of groceries just because you don't have to get in your car as much, right? Gas almost $5 a gallon in some places and more than that in some places. So, I mean, it's not like that. It's not doing a disservice because people don't have to get in their car as much. You know what I mean? But they still, everything else is going up. The energy bills, it's wintertime in some places, like real winter. So everything is still going up and nothing is going up when it comes to your pay. But if you kind of think about it, when everybody does their figures, but most of y'all don't pay attention to that either, right? These companies have to be transparent about their earnings. And then when they drop their earnings, you see, wait a minute, y'all in the green and y'all in the green. I'm talking about the green, and none of that trickled down to the people. And that's what I'm saying. Like, you guys are not into going against the information. It's the same thing about people who always quote scriptures. Most people go quote scriptures just to study it, just to be able to quote back, but they don't go get the information. And I don't understand this out there. So for all the people, hold on, I'm gonna get to the comments in a minute. But for all the people that was calling people who said they seen UFOs or things that's flying and all these other things. Now I guess so much so y'all ain't saying that now, are y'all? No, because Senate had a whole meeting about it, right? And they had all these people out there. Oh, I guess my computer is acting up. Well, I had technical difficulties earlier, y'all. So I guess the things that I'm talking about it's gonna put me in that position. I know how that goes. You know what I'm saying? But at the end of the day, y'all know what I mean. It's the information is out there, and I wish that all the people out there, I wish y'all will go out there and y'all just check it out for yourself because it's out there. You don't have to worry about whether or not, it's real or not. Yeah, it's real. And people ain't crazy. So let's go with that. But the one thing that I do know that is crazy or what they're going to try to do, man, I'm still stuck, y'all. I don't know, man. This is crazy. But what I do think that they're going to try to do is, this whole thing with the fear part. Y'all got to be careful with the fear part because whatever these things are highly advanced, right? Super highly advanced. If they're super advanced like that, remember, if they was going to do something to us, they would have been done it. They ain't going to wait for us to get more advanced for them to say, yo, now we're going to go out there and do stuff to them. No. I just don't believe in that. But I mean, if you do, that's cool. Put it in the comments. Let me know what y'all think, right? But anyway, I got my guest on. I can't really, get into a whole lot because we already had the start late. I see my computer screen is still froze. I'm froze up there looking crazy right now, right? That's the worst pose to be in right now. Frozen on screen and it's live, right? It's the worst, but we're going to figure this out, man. We're going to get through it. We're going to act like this is just the avatar. But we're going to get through it, y'all, because I'm telling y'all, man, y'all know sometimes when you are on your purpose, right? And I mean, not sometimes as if you're not always on your purpose, but once you figure out your purpose, there are going to be things that's going to come up in the way of that. You're going to have to be able to maneuver around that, I promise you. And we're going to get through this. So let me bring my guest up because that's what it's about. Listen, Aaron, what's up?
Hey, I was hoping that you would no longer be frozen once you put me in the room.
No, once I put you in there, this is crazy. This is the worst pose ever to be frozen in too, like that's crazy.
My team is always making fun of me because anytime I'm on the podcast, like whatever the images that's like shown on the screen, it's always me like this in the most awful position ever. And I'm like, I don't know how to fix it. So I feel
No,
you. I feel the pain.
I feel so bad. So what I'm gonna do is, because hopefully it's gonna catch up, and the reason I can't like refresh because we're live now and it's actually people watching, so we're not gonna do that. This is just gonna seem like I got an avatar today, but hopefully it'll pick up and I'll get back right. But we do have a comment real quick before we get started. Let me get that in real quick. And that is from the Rose Show. Case in point of why you can't listen to the media for years. The same people who call others fascists and Nazis are now visiting those they accuse and talking about they're now working with them. And that's a fact. But remember, you know, a lot of these words that people use and the way that they do these things in order for you to get an emotion out of us. I told y'all, man, I keep telling the people, man, they figured out a way to always get us to react based on our emotions, because emotional intelligence is one thing we can lack, because we always trying to figure out who an enemy is. Like, we can see the enemy, but the fact that you get benefits, it, you can't see the enemy, but it's right there, because a lot of y'all get Section 8, because a lot of people get, welfare and all these other. I'm not knocking people that have to use this. I'm saying that because you have the system in, it puts you in a position to not see the real enemy. But how could that not be? So I'm
And
gonna
I
tell
think they were very strategic about it. I don't mean to interrupt you, but I
no
think they were
doubt.
very strategic about muddling the definition of words on purpose. And I was just looking on my phone because I saw this earlier, and I think it speaks to this. The words that we use, we have muddled, like, what is, because they've questioned or they've blamed and all these things, we don't know what fascist is anymore. Like, people are very confused. Even like the word bigotry, I'm like, you are being a bigot, and they're like, no, I'm not. Like, how did we get to a place where we don't even know the definition anymore because we've muddled everything so much? But this thing says he got you to stop trusting the media, got you to stop trusting scientists, our legal system, our judicial system, all these things that we, relied on for these structures. We have gotten to a place where we don't know what to trust at all, and I think it's kind of scary.
Yeah, it is, and you're right. Unless I think that's when I think discernment comes, right? Because I think everything that we deal with is a balance, right, of our flesh and is spiritual too. And for some odd reason, I think people, they dismiss the spiritual. Hold on, before we keep going, we gotta tell everybody who you are. We got to get into it. We didn't introduce you. I was not.
Sorry, I could talk politics for forever, so I'm like, let's go.
We're going to talk about everything, right, that we can in the time that we have, because I am excited about having this conversation. I told you about that. And so it's going to be amazing. So do me a favor. Can you introduce yourself to the audience and let them know why you're on the platform?
Absolutely. Yeah. My name's Erin Harris. I'm going to tell my story because I can't tell what I do without really telling my story. But former educator, I spent 15 years in the classroom between the DC metro area. Now I'm out in the Denver metro area. I have taught literally every grade K through 8, and then I've taught my program to high schoolers and college age kids. So I've taught the whole gamut. I have also taught in 9 different schools, mostly non-white schools. I live in a very white neighborhood now, but it's given me an incredible perspective on systemic racism, all things really that are our systemic challenges between socioeconomics and all that stuff. I did end my educational career in a school shooting. It was gang related. One student was shot, no fatalities, but super traumatizing for me. So after that happened, I checked myself into a mental health facility twice, where I learned just really amazing skills and tools, but also had a lot of aha moments. I recognized that we are not teaching these skills and tools to our kids, and we absolutely should be. Oh, you disappeared. Maybe you're getting fixed. But we're not teaching these things to our kids, and we really should be teaching them to our kids because trauma is very much part of the human experience. Like, I don't think a single human gets to leave this planet without enduring trauma. And so I'm on a mission to bring our computer-based trauma-responsive curriculum to our educational system, making sure it's free and accessible, not just for our kiddos, but our educators, our home support networks, mom, dad, aunt, uncle, grandma, grandpa, brother, sister. Oh no, I lost him. I don't know if I'm still alive. It says I'm still alive. So if you're still listening, awesome. I firmly believe that you're back, maybe.
Yeah, yeah, I'm here. It's just my camera is doing everything but being on. It's cool. I'm here though. Go ahead.
Yeah. And so, yeah, we want to make sure that our program is free and accessible to anybody, literally anybody supporting our kids in our educational system. I truly believe the adults in the world need to play catch up in this way. And in order for us to really solve generational trauma, generational cycles, I think us as adults need to really like bubble wrap our kids in this kind of knowledge. But the other aha moment I had was that this is, mental health is very much a privilege in our country. For me personally, I had to be an adult in crisis, have insurance and $1,600 cash. I don't think that is the reality for most humans on our planet. And so our other part of our nonprofit work is really getting our, again, computer-based curriculum out to marginalized communities and communities that haven't had access to these types of resources typically, whether it's for financial means or whatever. But that's everything we're doing. We are a team of about 100. We are all 100% volunteers, myself included. We represent 7 different countries. And it's, I think, in a world that feels like it is constantly on fire, I think this work is very much a coping skill for a lot of us to kind of keep putting one foot in front of the other.
Right. Well, I mean, that's deep because, in this, I talk about this a lot where people, they find reasons to separate us more than they could find means to find that,
Yep.
they bring us together, right? And
when I
go ahead.
Go ahead. I was going to say, when I was listening to you talking about mobilizing, I wrote down on my post-it note, mobilizing mental health. If we can have leaders who divide us like this, then why can't we come together and bring ourselves together? I think, mental health seems to me like a no-brainer. Both sides of the equation are like, they're crazy. They need help. Cool. Let's just all go to therapy and start doing mental health work. Let's just all do it, let's mobilize and come together in that way versus separating like they want us to.
Well, yeah, because if you kind of think about it, it works for them to do that, right? Because if you are in an emotional state, your reaction, emotionally, you'll do things that keep feeding the system because, it puts us into, what, I can only worry about me type thing. And look at people, and the sad thing is, like you said, systematic racism, it exists only because we keep allowing it to. And I mean, I feel like, certain things, like you said about words earlier, they're starting to diminish certain words. Now it's starting to be not even having the meaning that they used to have, right? So now we understand that, all right, there was a system put in place that just wasn't there for people that was, responsible, for building the country for free. And I think that's the one part that we can't overlook. Now, most people want us to overlook all the other parts of that, and I get that, like, all right, you don't want people to relive in the trauma because all it does is keep you, colorblind, so to speak, right? Because, I feel like, everybody that look like you is not always best for you anyway. So you gotta learn learn how to love other people. You gotta learn how to love everybody. So what do you tell us a little bit about this? Because I know you were talking about neighborhoods and based on where you live, but versus where you had to be an educator. And what were some of the challenges that you faced when it came down to educating Black children?
Yeah, I mean, I think my biggest challenge is that I have loved and adored my children so much that it's been hard for me to be part of the problem and not understand why or how. You know, I know being a white woman in the educational system and working with Black and brown children is very much why we continue to perpetuate systemic racism. And I said for years, I said, I don't want to be part of the problem. I know I'm part of the stereotype, but I don't know how to, I want to be part of the solution for them. And it was really hard. Honestly, I'll be honest, I don't feel like I fully understood it until the overturn of Roe versus Wade, because until you have your rights and you are officially like outwardly a repressed person, you don't really understand the nuances of that lived experience. And I didn't realize I was fighting to prove myself as a human, as a woman before the overturn. And it was like a stab in the chest, because I was like, oh my God, I thought all these years we were all equals and doing all the things together, and I am not an equal. That was, you know, a rude awakening. And I realized in those moments, though, where I was like, oh my gosh, this is where systemic racism is. It is not in something that I can point a finger to as an educator in the system. It is in the nuances. It's in the language. It's in the microaggressions, and it's in the facial expressions and the nonverbal communication. It's in the policies. It's in the opportunity gaps. It's in, you know, it's so much more than just like, I can't just love my children enough to make systemic racism not happen, right? It is so much bigger than that, so much more entrenched in our society, and so much more nuanced than I mean, I'll be honest, right now, it's not very nuanced. People are very in your face about it, their bigotry and things like that. But previously in our history, it was a lot more nuanced. So I'd say my biggest challenge was really seeing their trauma reactions. We're all living in trauma reactions, but seeing these babies and these children that I love, seeing their trauma reactions of the systemic racism and the society they were given, and knowing that sometimes like their behavior is a form of communication because of that trauma, and knowing they're being hurt and not knowing how to fix it because it's so much bigger than anything I can do 8 hours a day as a teacher, you know?
Right. You know what, though? Like, just speaking from the inside, right? I know a lot of times, you know, people will look at the things that we go through in our community, right? And then when we come to school, you know, a lot of times that was some of us, that was our only relief from whatever we was dealing with in order to get back and forth to school, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's trauma, you know, of course, was different. And it was, you know, in this school where everybody dealing with something that has happened at home because of the way home was always broken, right? And the things that were used to break up the home is the thing that I feel like is the missing part of the systemic racism that we don't really pay attention to. Like, when I mean that about we, I mean just me as my people, because look, we look at certain things that be given to us as a benefit more than it's being used against us, right? Because they give it to us in the sense of it making it seem like it's free. So like I mentioned earlier about, you know, welfare and different things like that. Like, we know that a lot of people that was able to get Section 8 and all these things, there was a pertinent rule that you know you could not have a man in the house in order for you to have these benefits. And then in a lot of different ways, it's like, yo, for you to continue to get certain benefits, this person needs to be on child support through the state, right? Because the whole amount of money that a person pays from child support doesn't go to the child. A portion of that goes to the state, right? So if you kind of think about it, those things that people take and use as a means of saying, oh, I'm being given something, is the very part of the systematic racism that we overlook. This is what causes the trauma for us when we come to school. Like, you got the food that we eat. Okay, a lot of times people are being raised by the food that's based on the systems allowing the food that you get. And it's processed food, all of these different things. So it's a lot, right? And so those are the parts that we can fix, but that's the part that we don't fix, right? Because we got all of these other things in front of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't, sorry, what were you going to say?
Oh, not, no, no. Go ahead, go ahead.
I just, I've been doing a lot of thinking about intersectionality, and I don't know if you're familiar with this terminology or not, but for anybody listening, it's really about, and I'm looking at a picture because I think looking at it is the best way to really process and understand it. But the more ways in which you have been othered in our country, the less access you have to resources and or power and privilege. So based on, the topics that they have in this graphic are like gender, citizenship, skin color, formal education, ability, sexuality, neurodiversity, mental health, body size, housing, wealth, language. And like, the less othered you are, again, the more access you have to resources. I think it's fair to say the further away you are from systemic racism or bigotry, I think it's also fair to say the less likely you are to endure trauma. I feel very privileged because I am a white woman. And so I am married to a man. I have 2 kids. We have a house. When I look at a lot of these things on the outside of this graphic, I feel very fortunate. And I feel very fortunate to have also, my husband grew up never knowing when his next meal was, oftentimes homeless, in a lot of these, you know, societal challenges were part of his childhood, which is why I tend to work with similar children that have similar life stories and challenges, because I want them to know that they can come out of it okay. Like, your parents' mistakes don't need to be your mistakes, and we can fight this, power privilege dynamic together and change the narrative. So I get like that systemic, like when the food is yours and the whole system is, it keeps you stuck in it, right? Like, it keeps you, if you make too much money, you no longer get that support. So a lot of families I've worked with don't want to make more money, because then they lose a lot of access to their government, and then they're actually government assistance, and then they actually
Right.
can't buy food for their kids. And so it's like this perpetual
Right.
cycle. And it's like, how do you get out of that, into a different space of that intersectionality if the system is constantly putting it back on you?
Right. And I think that's where that's where the missing link is, right, in the communication between people who are going through those type of things, because that's where the work together part comes in. As you know, they
Mm-hmm.
always used to say this back in the day, like it takes a village, right? They say it always says it takes a village to raise a kid. And in the metaphorical sense, we have gone away from that, right? Because everybody is like me. So a lot of times we suffer through these things alone. We
Mm-hmm.
take the burden on ourselves because somebody told us that working harder would bring us more. You know, some people are working 2 jobs and even more, right, to try to bring extra in when we still haven't learned what money is. People mostly use money as a means of just spending, not as a tool. Like, if we
Mm-hmm.
understand, like, or we was taught, right, like, what is money really used for, then I think a lot of people will understand that, okay, this is how you use it. Oh, it's supposed to go out there and bring more people back just like it. But that's the mindset that we haven't been taught. We've been taught to consume. Why? Because we keep putting scarcity. It's like a fear tactic of scarcity, right? Like, you
it's
got a certain
it's
amount of
tapping into our it's tapping
money.
into our psyche. It's kind of like the pandemic toilet paper
That's right.
situation, right? Like,
Exactly.
it's a mental mind game, and they are constant. Am I allowed to curse on this?
Yeah, of
They're
course.
constantly fucking with us, right? And it's like
Right.
going back to the words and language, right? They're fucking with us in that way, and they are fucking with us. My team is going to be so mad that they're going to have to bleep out all these words. But it's all a mental, it's all, they're in their psyche. Like, the consumerism culture in our country is so intense, and it's become an addiction for a lot of Americans where they don't even recognize it. Like, they will put themselves into so much debt, and it's hard for me to not come back to, oh, there you are, you're back. It's hard for me to not come back to mental health, because I think every
Right.
challenge that we have as a country, whether it is our consumerism culture, to our shame culture, to our racism, to our political environment, to our media issue, to our hoarding, to obesity, to our whatever, divorce rate. Like, it literally doesn't matter. It all comes down to mental health. And if we have a system that is tapping into our psyche and manipulating us from every single one of those aspects, we are going to fail. There is no way for us to ever get above that, right? But they are manipulating us through our media, through all of these things, to make our problems worse so that they can be greedy and continue to, line their pockets.
Well, I agree with you on that. I
You
agree
froze
with you on that.
again.
I know it's just one of them days. We're gonna get through this though, right? It's still gonna be a great show. We're gonna get through this, right?
We got
But
it. We got it.
I definitely agree with you on that because mental health is really important. But that's another thing that we have gone, throughout because we have uh either did a couple of things. We either trauma bonded with other people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in order to get through things, or we have internalized it to the point where it's just stored and tucked away. And then
Mm-hmm.
people don't really, deal with it until an emotion strikes them in order for them to bring it all up. So I think you're right about that mental health. And because we lack such, I guess we would call it emotional intelligence, the same tricks are being used against us, like I said earlier, attacking our emotions. Just think about this election. Think about how divisive it was because people were uh, making it about race and gender, and when it should have been more about, does it have anything to do with the price of your food, or does it have anything to do with how what kind of curriculum you want in schools, like, or whatever your main topic was. It didn't seem like those were the issues with this time. And
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
I saw a story today, I was going to say in my intro about, it's really happening. They called for women to divorce their husbands and break up with their boyfriends over, the election. And it's really happening. There are guys getting, that are being divorced, women are divorcing their husbands. And it's
And
weird to
I'm
me
sure
that
any politician up there gives a shit, right? Like,
at
like
all
they don't
about
care. They don't
what you
care.
do at all. Like they not
It's not
getting
going to change
divorced
anything. Nothing
at
we are
all.
doing is going to be able to change any of that. I mean, honestly, I think all of this was planned out a decade ago. I don't think we could have changed any of these things, even if we tried to a couple of years ago. I think that, the government's been playing chess. The politicians have been playing chess, and we're just kind of their pawns in their day to day.
Well, at some point, we have to wake up. I don't think, we can't use the term woke at all no more because they have totally taken that and dismantled that into a whole bunch of other stuff. But, the term wake up, I guess we're going to have to because, if nothing else, we're going to have to find ways that we could, get past our biases, right? And learn
Mm-hmm.
how to function as a group of people that says, hey, with or without a government's help, how can we survive as a
Mm-hmm.
group of people? Right? How
Mm-hmm.
can we maintain our neighborhoods? How can we maintain certain things? Because look, a lot of these areas that we may not live, they're being tormented right now with people who were just let in here illegally. Like, I'm one for to say, like, yo, I think people deserve to, have a better way of life and have an opportunity, especially if they come from places that, just is tyranny. I believe that they deserve that opportunity if they can get here. And I mean, by all means, I mean, that might not go well with a lot of people, but I don't understand how you could just let that many people come in knowing that they have different agendas. Now that's different because they're showing their agenda in these certain states and people are really being terrorized. And I think the country has to really pay
But
attention to that, right?
But it's so hard. I mean, going back to your original point, it's so hard to actually know what is the truth. So, for example, like Aurora is actually like right up the street from me. That's where I've actually done a lot of teaching, and we have seen
Right.
these Venezuelan gang members, and I my husband's actually a police officer as well, and so we get
Interesting.
inside knowledge into that stuff, and I'm like, there's nothing happening up there. We did see video footage for like 30 seconds of some scary things, but I work very deeply with some of the town council members and things like that in Aurora, and they're all like, I don't know how else to tell media that there's nothing happening. It was like a 30-second incident, and then it was done. And then we see in the media like it's blown out of proportion, and we have like our police and stuff are getting Venezuelan gang trainings and all of this stuff that's like, I'm seeing the reality of the situation literally firsthand, but then the media is making it a completely different thing. And it's like, how do you believe anything anymore? I think
Right.
that's the challenge is, and then I'll go back to my situation with the school shooting. And I wrote this down a lot earlier in our conversation where I said, what's the on the ground data? You were talking about like podcasting data versus what we see in the media kind of data. And I think that where we are seeing such a divide is podcasters or people who are reporting on this kind of level are reporting the actual data that we're seeing in the day-to-day life versus the media and the big world. It tends to not be what we want or need or are seeing. So for example,
Right.
with the school shooting, we were confiscating 4 to 5 guns a week on average, every single week from these kids. And I say this all the time to people because I'm always like, we need to know this data. We need to know that this is what's happening in our schools because the news is not telling us how often we're confiscating guns from our high schoolers. And they should be,
Right.
Nobody's
Right.
collecting that data. The other thing too is there's a high school here in Denver that had 3 completely separate gun related incidences in one school year 2 years ago. 3 completely different. Honestly, I'm pretty certain a couple of people between the 3 incidences ended up dying. But I don't know what the total number was for people injured. But I'm like, I know it didn't make national news because it wasn't a mass shooting, but I think as Americans, we deserve the right to know if we have a school or any school in our country that is enduring that much gun violence in a school year. That to me is a credible fact that we should be aware of. But what we only hear about
Yeah.
is when mass shootings in schools. And I'll tell you the same thing. The school I worked at that had the school shooting was mostly
Right.
Black kids. And
Right.
it barely made local news. I mean, I talked to people in our school system, like leadership in the Denver metro area, and they're like, we have no idea that happened. I'm like, because it's Black kids. If it was white kids,
Right.
I guarantee you across the country probably would have heard about it. But this is a society
Right.
and again, it goes back to algorithms and media and all of these things that are just out of our control and
Yeah.
really
And I
manipulating
think,
everything we can. Mhm.
and that's why I tell people a lot of times you have to go to the sources sometimes. And I think for me, like having this platform, that's what I'm saying. Like whenever we want to believe something, we always got to go to the places where people always want to prove like they right. And it's
Yep.
always in a place where it's a hearing involved. So that's why I tell a lot of people really, really pay attention to the Senate meetings, right? Because the one on school shooting, which is very, I think that's important because of what you were just saying. There were, and then, and this is why I hate that they are not bipartisan on this, right? That it is based on separate, it's partisan on the way that people are viewing what should be done. And in this, they have guys that'll run like the new guy that's trying to run for attorney general. He's a Democrat, but he's against having armed security at schools, right? Because he feel like based on his training from the Secret Service that it's one's body is supposed to shield them from the intended victim. And then, whenever the kickback was coming, it was like, yo, so you feel like people should use their bodies instead of having weapons to deter other school shooters from happening. And, they were really in a space where they were saying, yeah, and I really don't understand that because for one, nobody heard of that school shooting that you just mentioned, right? Secondly, nobody knows, like you just said, how many guns that you guys do confiscate, which means that there's a bunch more that you guys don't, right? And the
Mhm.
fact that whenever these incidents happen, it probably would have been deterred if they had security there or people that was there. If they got all this budget to send to other people who are not supposed to be here, they could pay so schools can have extra security, whether it's off-duty officers or whatever, to make sure they have a presence in school to help them to avoid that, right? I don't know. What do you
Well,
think
I'll
about
tell
that? Do
you.
you think that? Do you
Yeah,
think that's
yeah, yeah,
something that
yeah.
should be done?
I have so many things to say about that. Okay, first of all, when you started talking about Attorney General, I gave you a look because I thought you were talking about Matt Gaetz, who I am like terrified for him to actually be our Attorney General. So that's why I was like, ugh. But in case you're like, I don't know how to read her face. Okay,
Right.
the school I was in the school shooting with, we actually had a police officer there. And then, so the school shooting happened right before the pandemic. So I don't know if you remember like the timeline of all of the different events, but that was the summer after George Floyd. And so that whole school year of the school shooting and the pandemic, the school district that I was in was very actively working on getting rid of the police officers in our school building. And as soon as the pandemic happened, that was the first thing they did that summer. So it was a little bit interesting to be in that situation where here I am post-school shooting in a district that is now, for that exact reason, because they feel like marginalized communities feel traumatized by having, police officers with guns in the school building. And so one of our school board directors, who is a Black male, he made it his sort of mission that year to get rid of those officers. I think he has since, it's been a couple of years, and he has since said, okay, I understand why we had police officers in there, and we have started to implement more officers in schools. But it was very fascinating for me to the school I was in was very heavy. It had a lot of Black gangs and a lot of Hispanic gangs. And our police officer, Officer Cruz, was half Black, half Hispanic. And so I thought he was so, so amazing for the school, because you could see with the high schoolers, he could connect to kind of both of the gangs and both sides of that equation. And he built such a great relationship with them to help them get through officer trauma and all of that sort of component to that dynamic. So I don't know. I personally do not think that teachers should be armed. I personally would absolutely take a bullet for my students, and I take my job very seriously and would very much protect my kids in a heartbeat. And I think a lot of times people think that teachers don't want to have guns because of that. For me, I am a very emotional being. And I'll be honest, the second we realized it wasn't a drill, I had to start trauma recovery with my students. I sat in a corner with 6th and 7th graders who are still very much babies. And we were terrified. We were getting notifications on our phones from like, Ring doorbell apps stuff saying multiple kids shot and dead. And we didn't know what our reality was. I mean, we were literally sitting there holding each other, crying, texting people saying we loved them, and not sure what was going to be our future. I had to start trauma recovery. I also am married to a police officer who his brain is so vastly different than mine. He, I talk in my work a lot about the brain. He is very capable of getting to that frontal lobe very quickly. There is very little things that will rattle him. He is calm as a cucumber, even if there's like shots fired actively, he is utilizing that frontal lobe, and he has been trained for hours upon hours constantly on how to handle those sort of high stress situations. I, on the other hand, am very much trained to like get in the corner and go cry with these babies because this freaking sucks, and we need to talk about it and talk about our emotions so that we can live for the rest of our lives as functional human beings. So I do think that having armed police officers is a good solution for our country. I don't think having armed security is a good option because they are less qualified, and I think that that's super sketch. I don't think we should be arming our vets and having them sitting in parking lots trying to keep our kids safe. There's a lot of parents where I live that think that's a good solution. I think that vets have some of the worst mental health challenges in our country. And I think we have supported them the least on those mental health challenges. So I don't think we should give them guns and have them protect our schools.
Right.
But as a police officer's wife, I also think that we're struggling to find cops, period. And I think that more police officers continue to perpetuate systemic racism in a lot of ways. My husband's a very progressive police officer, but that is not historically typical, so
Right.
I'm not a Black person, but if I was a Black student, I would probably be pretty traumatized having a police officer with a gun in my school too. So I don't know.
Well, I mean, as a Black, well, I mean, that's what they call us. I mean, we've been at least 5 different things throughout history, but as a person that has to grow up with that moniker, I always say that our relationship with the police only stems from bad police officers.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what happens is, not enough good police officers speak up. I've had the sheriff on this platform. He's considered the vigilante sheriff out of Clayton County in Georgia. He was the one that was indicted on a RICO charge that were off of false accusations, which was a political campaign, right? So I've had him on, and some of the stories that he told were really, it was different coming from a police officer, right? Because there's so many different ways that we as Black men have been screaming out, yo, they're using the system against us. This thing is not right. This was used. This was added on. This was Trump. This was this. And so nobody would listen
For
because they
example,
would say, like, yo, this is what y'all do. Look at the rap music.
I was just going to say, for example, we better not
They was
have
like, look at the rap music. Look at all the things.
We better not have criminality on job applications anymore, right? I mean, that's a prime example of what you're talking about. We have criminalized dudes and Black men in our country, and there's so many who cannot get jobs because of that, but now we can have a felon as a president. I mean, to me, that's like sort of like our war on drugs. It's the same thing. There's hypocrisy time after time after time, where if it, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but yes, 100%.
I mean, but even with that, it still was an expression of, even with his whole campaign, it still was an expression of how the justice system can be weaponized against the person. I mean, if anything, it's always about us trying to look at the place from learning when we're given messages, right? When we're given messages, we react emotionally. Because even if people look at it from that point of view, they could say, "Hey, we have a felon as a president, right?" And then we can go back in history and look at, well, wait a minute, we have so many presidents that either was a felon before or after they was a president. So it's not like that wasn't a thing. And then we got to kind of look at this whole scenario. As much as we love a lot of the things that we think about when it comes to the government, whether it's the Constitution or whatever, I mean, let's be honest, it was all a felony because the land was stolen. It was people that was already over here. It wasn't like Christopher Columbus came over here and found nobody. They was already here. He just came through and saw who was here. All the things that happened for them to even acquire this land, and the fact that, we have to separate each other by what we call each other versus what we are. And if we just Americans, we're Americans. There's no way that I should be considered an African American when, if we look at, any Caucasian, they could just be saying, hey, I'm just an American. I mean, are you a European American or what? But then we think about it like this: just because people look a certain way don't mean that's who they are, because once you check that DNA, you'll realize that, yeah, your image may look like you one thing, but the majority of your DNA says you're just like me. So it's like we don't even know that, right? Because of the way that we've been trained. So that's what I'm saying. What the one thing about the president that I can say is that outside of him being a felon, on top of what we feel like as me as a person, as well as a Black man, had to go through with things of being a felony, the one thing that I can say, that what I was going to say before you jumped in, was all of these men or everybody out here that's been saying, listen, This has been happening to me. They've been weaponizing and using the justice system against me. This is why I cannot get a job. This was a misdemeanor. Now they turned it into a felony just because they wanted to. Now my record is like this. This was this. This was that. Now we've been yelling at for years. Now with the president being who he is, look at all the things that he went through and everything that they weaponized. It was like, hey, let me show y'all that this is the truth. But we, as a group of people, we were emotional, right? We looking at it more like, yo, this person is a felony, instead of saying, hey, wait a minute, don't y'all see how they did all of this? They used it. So if they could use it, if they use it against a person who can afford to go through that, what do you think happens to the people who cannot? This is what happens when they talk about a jury of your peers. And listen to this. I'm going to tell you this real quick, and I'm going to let you speak. But look, I've had other moms on here that's gone through different trials of things that's happened to their children. Their children have been, murdered or killed by the police or whatever. And then they had secret trials without the witnesses and without the actual plaintiff being there. And they can acquit and do all these other things to people without even the person that is actually there to get the justice even being there. Like, so when I say that we've been yelling and screaming this from the top of our lungs that this justice system has been weaponized and used against us as a group of people, he has been the poster child for the fact that, hey, look, they did it to him. So listen, I want all of us to look at it from that standpoint as well. Feel how we want to feel about whoever's in the presidency.
Yeah.
But we need to look at it from that point of view. Now, this has been a person that has been able to say, flashlight. Yes, y'all, this has really happened. So now can we get some things expunged? Now can we go back and look at some of these other cases and saying, wait a minute, some of these cases need to be recruits now. Because if this happened and he was able to prove that the justice system was weaponized, then let's get some of these other people off of these 50-year probations for jaywalking. Let's get some of these other people off of, like, now it's time for people to get in their bag and say, listen, okay, now the president, but they not looking at it from that standpoint. When I talk about mobilization, I don't mean for us to elect the next black leader. I'm saying collectively in your mind, mobilize your thought process. Like, look, now's the time for you to do exactly. Look, they proved it. Look, he proved it. They used the justice system to weaponize. Y'all been screaming at. Now it's there. It's an example that's there. Now get to work. Now get to work to change it. Now let's get these laws in place. Now we can get these lawyers. Now we can figure out where we're going. Go ahead.
But I think that there's still like race involved, right? Like, yes, I think that what I have seen, at least from my perspective, is that I think it's not apples to apples because he is a white, rich man. And I think at the end of the day, like, we as a society are going to continue to excuse it and allow it and justify it. And I think like I've never thought about it from that perspective. And that's a really interesting perspective for me to really think about. But I think like
think about this from think about this from the race perspective, right? Yeah, he is a rich white man, right? That went through the thing, but it was black people that was on the hunt to get him. So it's still a place of us having to look at it from a standpoint of, even as black people can get to the highest place of a scenario where they can even be a part of going after who will be considered a president. So whenever we're looking at this thing from a racial perspective, that's exactly how they get us every time. That's the hook. Whenever we look at these scenarios and we put race in the forefront, they got us. Because we don't see the truth. It's like the truth is, yeah, he is a white man that's a billionaire. They didn't give a damn. And that's the point I'm saying about the people who are not millionaires. Imagine how they don't give a damn about them. It's even worse for them. They are actually in jail, in prison right now because of the fact that this man. So it's race can be looked at in a certain way if we still are in that mindset. But once we look at the examples that if most people, if you think about it from a spiritual perspective, that's the part that our balance is off, right? Because we look at it from a physical thing. We look at it from a fleshly place because of where we feel. But we don't look at it from a spiritual place. I don't know what what you subscribe to, but just think about if there's a higher power out there. The higher power is saying, all right, look, I bet. So listen, I want to give y'all these examples. Now I'm gonna show y'all this. Now, are y'all gonna see what I'm showing y'all, or are y'all gonna fall for the hook? So it's like, hey, look, I'm gonna show y'all how y'all could get in play right now. Now I'm saying for everybody who even looked at him as race, now you still can use him because it's case law now. You can use them. So now it doesn't matter what your race is, you can use them because of this thing that happened. So now do we come together now? Now do we stop looking at it from a racial standpoint? Now we look at it from a spiritual standpoint and like, oh, thank you, God. You
I
know
think
what?
for
Thank you
like,
for doing it thank you for doing it to him. Right, and I'm saying
yeah,
it in from a perspective like, thank you for doing it to him and not doing it to Kamala, because she might have went to jail if it was for her. Or if it was the other way around, right? She would have went to prison. So
yeah,
thank God that it wasn't. All right. So and then it would have looked like, why? Because of an example being made. So then now all of the people that would have went after her still would have been people that look like her. Right, because it's the same people that
yeah,
it's
yeah,
so we would have been in that space too, because even with her record, look at all the reason why a lot of black men didn't vote for her. It wasn't, especially not in California. She was responsible for a lot of them being in jail in situations where nobody cared. So it had nothing to
yeah.
do with all of that other stuff, right? Some people took it personal, but what I'm saying is that whenever we get out of looking at things from a spiritual space, we miss the hook and we get caught. We miss the hook and we get knocked out every time, because this was an example for us. This was the light being shined for us to know how to mobilize and get lined up, but we
Yeah.
missed it because emotionally we got caught in racism again. Now we looking at ways to why he did it, because he's white and because he's this, and like, no, like, not okay. I won't argue with a person that says that, no, but I'm saying like, you still missing it. No, this is what for you to figure out how you could get closer to your freedom, because he only got 4 years to be in here. And let's be honest, it's only like 3.5, because at the half of that mark, they're gonna start doing what they do to get other people in there. So what
Yep, yep,
it is
yep,
it is what it is. So at
yep.
this point, okay, now what are you gonna do?
So what I'm
That's
hearing
what
you
I'm saying.
say, I'm not religious. I'm pretty atheist, but I think like for me,
Okay,
I'm a firm believer in hitting rock bottom. I've had to hit rock
okay,
bottom in my marriage in order to like actually work and give a shit and try. I've had to hit rock bottom in
right,
my own mental health. I think, I am a firm believer in trying to empower people to find the lessons that we can learn in those rock bottoms. And I do think that the US is hitting some rock bottoms. I mean, as an educator, when the pandemic happened, I was like, wonderful, let's crumble the
right,
education system completely so we can actually do it some justice and build it the way the kids deserve. And I
right,
think that we're in that space right now where it's like, okay, well, what is and isn't okay with us, and how can we redefine it and
right,
what that looks like. And I think that taking down
right.
our race and gender barriers would absolutely help us get to that better and more progressive space. I just think it's really
Mm,
hard to, and maybe it is emotions, but it is hard to look at somebody who is so goddamn triggering in so many ways and be like, okay, this is some sort of beacon of hope for me here. But I see what you're saying in that, like, I think we have seen over the last decade that there's a lot of gaps in our Constitution. I think, for example, the fact that we can't have a felon as a president, like, there have been times where I'm like, how did the founding fathers not like put that safeguard in there? Like, of course, but
Right.
here we are. They found a
Right.
gap. They are utilizing it, they're monopolizing it, and they're running with it. And it is what it is. But maybe this means that we need to do some amending and fixing to repair some of this work, or maybe it's opening up new opportunities for people who,
Right.
have had trauma that has stopped them from being able to climb a ladder or whatever. I don't know. I think there's pros and
Mm.
cons to it all, but
Or let's look at it from this standpoint. Maybe what he did was able to use, if there was a loophole, it had to be one based on law. Now, it's a couple of things that we could look at here. It's either that whatever that they said was a felony was a real felony, because if it was a real felony, would that really count for what it is? Or was it something that was conveniently turned into a felony that would be normally a misdemeanor?
because
Now,
we're
if
just
it was
making it
some
all
type
up
of
as we go along. Mm-hmm.
and then think about it. If there is a loophole, it's the same thing like before when he was in. This is another thing that people missed before when he was in office, because of the fact of us, me being in the community that I'm from, we look at poverty differently. We look at poverty as a means of we need somebody to do something for us. We don't look at poverty as a means for us to try to motivate to get out of it. So here's the thing. When he was in office the first time and they had a debate and he told them, and they kept talking about the tax thing. And he was like, well, everything that I'm doing with the taxes is legal. He said, because if it wasn't, then none of you guys up here will be doing it. And then everybody else that was up there, they didn't never have a rebuttal for that. Then I went and started looking at taxes and I was like, wait, hold on. So you mean to tell me if you have a business and you do this and you do that and you could do this and you could do that? But until they said that, how many of us was triggered in order for us to understand? Because here's the thing about us and as a group of people, our deficit is our finances. We always equate the way that we live, where we live, what we wear, what we drive, as to what we actually have access to and our finances. That has been the one thing that has always jeopardized us, and we had to grow up in projects and different things like that. It was based on our finances, right? You had parents who had decent jobs on paper, but not in wages. They had enough to be, to get by, but not enough to make extra, right? So then you got people who, whatever the case may be, right? But here's my thing. Like, how many talented groups of people that are out here that have these ideas and these things in their head and their visions, and they won't figure out a way to come together and create a business? Now, most people are looking at rich people in general and finding a reason to hate them, because the people hate capitalism versus they're saying, well, what could capitalism work for me? I do have responsibilities. I do have bills. Like, what could it do for me? And then when you find out, like, yo, there is things that I can do. Wait a minute. You mean to tell me there are breaks that I can get? Hold on for a second. You telling me that the difference between how the rich are taxed versus how I'm taxed every day when I go to work is that they take mine out first and the rich, they take theirs out later? So why can't I be in the part that I can't get it later? What is stopping me from being that? So we put a limit on ourselves just based on what we feel like is wrong. Like, you said that you're not religious, which is I'm not religious either, but I do believe in creation, right? So what I'm saying though is that there are things in this world that I know that equates to freedom. And what equates to freedom is finances, right? But learning what that does, not just sitting around here figuring it out that I'm upset because I don't have and I need somebody in there to give it to me. Because here's another thing we miss. Let me tell you this, and that's another reason why people didn't pay attention. Whenever the guy that came up with Bitcoin and he came out and he said, hey, listen, I'm going to create a blockchain. I'm going to create something that nobody can control. And I wanted to make sure that I get this information out to the people. Why? All the people out there who've been struggling, all the people out here who've been disenfranchised, all the people out there who've been systematically abused and separated and everything. I'm going to create a way for you guys to actually build wealth. It's not going to be the .com era. It's not going to be the whole website era. It's not going to be that. Yeah, a lot of people miss that, right? It's not going to be that. But I'm going to create something that it will be there forever. And if you set it up right, it'll be there forever for your children. Now, listen, I'm going to tell y'all how to do it. But then most people wouldn't pay attention to it. Now, look at crypto for an example. It's not financial advice for those of y'all that are watching. But whenever they came out with it and they said, hey, these are the cryptocurrencies and these are what they do. Yes, they say currencies, but all of them are not meant for spending. This is what they are and this is what they do. Most people looked at it as a means, oh, that's this, it's volatile, it's this, it don't do that. Now look, they done created a whole department of government efficiency named after Doge. Now I wanted to understand like how many people actually took the time when it was so low and invested in it. How many people went out and learned about it? But these are all things that was mentioned during the same person that's saying, hey, I want to create a scenario so you guys can get to it. Some people are worried about AI, Aaron. You know that's going to take their job, right? But then it's like, yo, okay, hey, over here, guys, there's some way that you could put that little bag of chip money that you just take a month and say, hey, with these snacks you buying, these sodas you drinking, just take a month of that, right? And say, here, I'm gonna put it over there. It's things that's not even a penny out here. I'm just gonna put it there. It's gonna leave it there. And then look at the situation now. Just imagine how many people's lives has changed right now just because of that. Now we talking about it don't matter who's in there. It really matters about the information. If we could get out of our feelings, Aaron, I promise you. If we could get out of our feelings and really start to see what is being shown to us, I feel like we'll get it and we can grasp it and we can move forward. It doesn't take, most people are looking for that light in the sky, right? They're looking for that light in the sky to show them the way.
Mm-hmm.
That's what everybody's looking for. It's coming. Something is coming. Everybody looking for something outside of themselves instead of what's already in them. Like, and I think that's where we're going wrong at. We're looking at this whole thing the wrong way. We're looking at the presidency the wrong way. Just my opinion, right? We're looking at this war thing the wrong way. We're looking at our economy the wrong way. And we're looking at situations with race and gender the wrong way. Like we're looking at it from an emotional space and all of those things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we're missing.
It's
We're missing
interesting
that thing
though.
in the back.
I think it's interesting though, because you keep talking about emotion, and I think that I personally, and I'm in the industry of helping people understand their emotions better. So I firmly believe that we are not emotionally in tune enough. I don't think we are emotionally intelligent enough, and we should be more. I actually think that the more I have understood my emotions, and the more I understand the diversity of my emotions, and the more I know how to responsibly navigate my emotions, the more in control I am, the more liberated I feel, and the more empowered I am to do the things that need to happen in this society and world. So it's interesting
That makes
because
sense.
I
That makes
agree there's a
sense.
lot of emotions and things. And I don't think that a lot of these decisions should be grounded in emotions. But on the flip side, we're also talking about humanity, and we're talking about people's human rights in a lot of this stuff. And that's really emotional and
Right.
it's really traumatic. I mean, a lot of people in our country are going through some serious trauma right now. And it's hard to not be emotional because we're humans. I just think that
Right.
like
Right. Right.
somewhere in there, it feels like there's a middle ground, right? Like we don't want to be irrationally emotional, but we also don't want to be totally pragmatic and devoid of emotions because we are humans
Right.
and we
Right.
just can't. But like somewhere in the
No,
middle, we need to
you
have
said the key word.
productive emotions, like my
Yeah.
right now I'm so full of rage. I need to use that rage to be part of the solution and have productive emotions and really like get rid of the noise so that me going and crying about my rage is not going to solve anything. That's not productive emotions.
Right.
But sitting here and developing a mental health program, because I know that's the issue that we're facing as a society, is how I can make productive emotions happen.
Well, that
Sorry, what
makes
were you going to
sense
say?
because no, that makes sense. Everything that you're saying, that makes sense. Like it's about having emotional intelligence, not the lack of emotion, but in order to understand how to control your emotions, because that's your superpower. That's your
Mhm.
given superpower. Like when people don't use their superpowers or they don't believe in the fact that they have one, that's what puts them at a disadvantage because most people look at it as a weakness in order for you to
Mhm.
understand that because you feel anger and rage doesn't mean that your thought process or your reaction to it should be the same. It's about the fact
Just
that you're
like your
human and you
trauma
feel
shouldn't define you. Just like your trauma shouldn't define you, your emotions should define you either.
I think that's the thing about trauma, right? The trauma is an emotional based space because it's a memory too, right? It's the trauma is a memory that just keeps being replayed in your head until you can find a means to do it. Think
But
about how many
sometimes it's not
people
even playing
find
in your head,
drugs.
though. Sometimes
No,
it's
it's
not
your
even playing in your
subconscious.
head. You're just
No,
reacting
it's
and you're
just
like, I'm doing drugs, but I don't even recognize I'm doing drugs because of that trauma. I'm just doing drugs because it makes me feel better, right? Like a lot of times we're
well, I
not
don't know. I
actually.
think some people no, it's just people know why they do drugs. You know what it is? It's just that they don't tell everybody. Certain people go through things that are
That's true.
traumatic that they don't want anybody to know. So their
Mhm,
way of masking it is to look like they're having fun. They want to be the life of the
mhm,
party. They want everybody else to
mhm.
be in a state so they can't see them. It's just like if you ever think about some people who just if you look at them the wrong way, or not even the wrong way, if you just look at them too long, they get angry or they start to feel some type of way because they feel like you can see them, right, for who they really are. When people got things to hide, they don't want you looking at them because they feel like you can see that there's something
They
wrong
feel
with them.
exposed.
So it's the same scenario, right? It's the same scenario when it comes to that. Whenever we are in a space that we get affected emotionally, the one thing that we don't do is we don't get logical, right? Because
Mhm.
our emotion take over. And in most cases, having emotional intelligence is being able to say, hey, I feel bad. Because as a man, think about whenever we fell and we cried, they told you, don't cry, you're a boy, get up, wipe that
I,
off. Just they want you to bottle your emotions as a man, right? We're taught that as men how to bottle our emotions. So now those men who haven't found
I,
outlets for their emotion, they become some of the hardest people in the world
yeah,
because they haven't been
yeah.
able to release their emotion.
You read my mind because I was literally just going to go there. And I think that it's one of the most inhumane things we have done as an entire planet. It hasn't even just been American culture that's done this. Our entire planet, for the entire history of dudes, has told you all to not have emotions. And I think it's really inhumane. And I think that it's honestly a huge component to why we are struggling as a planet right now, is because we have diverse emotions. We have so many diverse emotions. And I'll use an example. When I went to the mental health facility, we did what's called an anger iceberg. So picture an iceberg, you put anger at the top, and I had to come up with a situation and describe my actual emotions. At the time, it was pandemic. I was around my kids 24/7. They were driving me nuts with their clutter and messes. So I was like, okay, I'm going to talk about how I don't want to be a screaming mom anymore, telling my kids to pick up their goddamn socks anymore. So anger at the
Right.
top. Again, this is a really, really trivial example compared to like real world big things, but I was able to come home and recognize that it wasn't just anger. I was screaming and I was like, pick up your motherfucking God, right? But in reality, what I was
Right.
feeling was I was feeling unappreciated, unheard, taken for granted, tired, exhausted, whatever, like all of these other emotions. And so once I did that, I came to my children. I said, children, mommy needs you to pick up your stuff the first time because these are the things I feel. I feel like you don't love me and appreciate me because you're just ignoring me and not doing the things, right? And I think that we see a lot of men who don't understand the diversity of their emotions, and our brains automatically default to anger. It's just what they do. My brain does it too. Every single, whether you're a man or a woman, your brain will default to anger if you do not understand your diverse emotions. And because men have been told to not have emotions, it's not that you all don't have like the emotional intelligence. It's just there's a guard, right? And it's like I don't know if you feel this way or if it's just like there's just like a inability to explore that further, or an lack of desire or shame or whatever it is. There's no exploring that further. And so I do think, just men and women come to this conversation about emotions with very different lived experiences. And I think that women,
Right.
because they've been allowed the ability to cry and explore their emotions, and sometimes not even, sometimes I'm like, I don't even know what I'm feeling. I'm just feeling things. I'm going to let myself feel things. I don't think dudes are allowed to do that sometimes. And I think it's a very healthy human experience to be able to get to a place where you're clear-headed, where you're not thinking about it from a space of emotion because you went through the process of feeling those emotions. um
I can say
Go
what
for it.
helped me.
Yeah.
Whenever I had to deal with the fact of what the men before me were teaching versus what I was feeling. Now, for most people, like I said, they don't have a spiritual balance. That's how come. I mean, it's hard for them to understand how to balance with. You could get that intelligence because you gotta realize, like, we haven't just had. We wasn't just told not to cry, but we also were shown, and some of them wasn't always good examples of what it was like to be a man. That's
Mm-hmm.
where another trauma it kicked in, right? Because the man that's showing you how to be a man they didn't have it right either. They were just
Mm-hmm.
going by what they did, and they decided to show you. And then when you feel like, this don't feel right, like I don't feel like I should have to go through this in order for somebody to do this, that, and the third, because men very seldom, unless it's their children, they don't receive unconditional love. And that's one thing that we have to accept as a man. This is where our intelligence start to come in at, when we start to accept our role in life, right? Once we start to realize our role in life is where our intelligence come in. Because before that, we are battling through different emotions. Because if we have a relationship with our moms are always like literally the first person to ever break our heart.
Mm-hmm.
Literally. We don't really talk about that because we have to always give moms the benefit of the doubt because of the fact that they are a mother, right? And they have these type of scenarios happen. They brought you into the world, they fed you, they sacrifice certain things in order for you to be here, even though you didn't ask to be here, right? But you are here. But the emotional base from the mom, whenever the man doesn't get the balance of that, is because where the mom comes in, she allows you to get those emotions out, right? Because she's that person. See, your dad helps you to be able to know how to balance it because there's a place
Mm-hmm.
and time as a man where your emotions need to be shown. Like you got
But
to
why
be
does
able
that
to
have
deal
to
with
be
it
the case, though? But that's not always
because
the
think
case.
about this. No, but yeah, think about this. No, for real.
It doesn't
Because if
have
you
to
have
be
an
always.
example of a no, listen. If you have a dad that handles conflict with your mom a certain way, where it doesn't result into violence, that's more of an example of you to learn how to deal with it. Because most people go by people's zodiac signs are so important to them. Now I don't know if in the space of atheist, but being an atheist, do that even come up? But I think a lot of people are in tune to what they feel like their zodiacs are, and that is a base of their personality. I know it can be different for other people, but most people subscribe to the base of their personality based on what they
Mm-hmm.
read. So there are people who have a certain level of what they would do or not based on their personality. But when you're shown an example as a man, not your personality, it gives you a base of how to deal with conflict, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I mean. Whenever you can be shown that. Now, whenever you don't learn that and you learn a spiritual base, then it says, okay, who can I report to? Because I didn't have a man that I was able to report to. So where can I get this place where I can understand where, okay, this is not good for me? And then you start to figure that out because we get so detached from nature. Nature shows us exactly how to deal with conflict. And there's so many different examples of it. That's why I think a lot of people don't subscribe to the spiritual base because they can't see the glass half full. They can only see it half empty. And whenever you are in a space where you can only see that from that frame of mind, that's where you miss it. And I know we talk about this a lot, and I know on the playback there'll be a lot of people that will get what I'm saying, and they'll be like, you know what, I didn't think about it from that perspective. Why? Because there's a place where people don't look at it from a spiritual space, because for them they think that their problems are other people. They think their salvation is from something outside of them. But no, very seldom do people take accountability and say, yo, no, I'm really the problem. It's the way that I'm thinking. I'm the
Mm-hmm.
problem.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I have a trauma. I have to accept that I have trauma. Like, listen, I
But
accept that I have
but
trauma. I have to accept it.
but
I
people are
can't be a
not
man that
self-aware
can't
like
accept it.
that. But people aren't
But I
self-aware like
think
that,
that's where
though.
but here's the thing though, Aaron. That's why platforms like this exist, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
there's a certain thing where people are saying like, yo, people are not I hear that all the time. People are not like this. People are not like that. But there are people that are. It's just that
Yeah.
they think they're the only ones. They
Yeah.
think they're the only
I'll give you
ones. How many times have you gone through something where you felt like, man, I got this. Nobody else going through
100%.
this right now.
I'll tell you a prime example. I'm going to tell you about trauma too, but I had a friend who reached out today and she was like, my son is having a suicidal ideations and I'm terrified. I don't know what to do. And I said, first thing you need to do is tell that kid that is absolutely part of the human experience. That is very, like, I think a lot of us don't want to exist at some point, but we have so much shame around these sort of like hard topics. And honestly, I think it leads to bigger rates of suicide and things like that because you feel alone. I am the only one who has thought this thought before, and that is so far from the truth. I think every single person at some point in time feels like I don't want to exist in this moment, and that moment could be 5 minutes, it could be 6 weeks, it could be 6 years. There have been moments in my marriage where I have not wanted to be with my husband. I want to be with him for forever, but there were like 5 years in there where I was like, I don't want to be with you. Like that doesn't mean it's for forever, right? Same thing with our lives. Just because I have a moment that might be 5 years of shit. I mean, we have, as a society for the last decade, we have been going through a moment. It has been a moment, right? And that doesn't mean it's for forever. And so I think that one of the things around mental health we need to destigmatize is a lot of these things. We all feel shame. We all feel imposter syndrome. We all feel I'm not capable of actually doing that thing, so that we don't. We all shit talk ourselves and are so unkind to ourselves, but then are like really nice to our friends. I always tell people you are stuck in your brain for forever. Like friends will come and go, people will come and go, family will come and go. You should be the nicest to yourself compared to anybody else. Love yourself the most. But like we are the meanest to ourselves. We crap on ourselves all day long. We have to name these things so that people can move forward and understand like, okay, because I don't want to exist right now doesn't mean I need to go off myself. It just means that like, this is a hard moment and I need to do something to figure it out. Yeah.
Yeah. And I agree with you. Cause I think, whenever people are getting into a space of wanting to not be here anymore, it's because of whatever they're going through, right? They feel like they're the only ones going through it. And that's why I think conversations like this are important as much as, that's why I have a conversation-based platform and I don't do like a niche base, or I don't try to stick people into their expertise, because I know your expertise is education. I know I wanted to come in here and talk to you because, you are, a person that has taught in the Black school system. We know exactly what the stigma is that comes with us as a group of people and how they talk about our education and how they talk about how low and how they talk about we can't read and all of these different things. So I know that for the most part, when you go on platforms, they will want to talk to you from that perspective. And I get that, but I'm so glad that we're talking about all the things that we're talking about tonight from this perspective and not just based on your expertise, because at the end of the day, there's somebody that's going to listen to this conversation and they're going to be like, damn, you know what? I ain't the only one that feel that way. Or I wasn't the only one that thought that. And yes, I get what they saying. Or no, I didn't look at it from that perspective. And I appreciate that. Right. And I do, because, very, very so often, you get A-type personality people and they just really want to promote themselves. And it's very hard for them to have a conversation with a person that, that you don't have to agree on every point, but it's about understanding different people's perspective and being able to respect it. So what was you going to say?
I don't know. What was I going to say? Shame culture. I don't know, but I actually agree. So I saw a meme today that was something like, as we go into the holidays, when we think about like what we're always told before the holidays, it's always like, don't talk about religion and politics and da. And it's like, well, maybe we are actually in a situation we're in because we keep telling people don't talk about the hard conversations. And what we should have been doing is teaching people how to have the hard conversations. And I think that we are so divided because I don't know. I honestly don't know who you voted for based on this conversation. And that's interesting to me because I live in a very, very conservative white Christian area. And I like go around,
Right.
I'm like, oh, I know exactly who you voted for. I know exactly who you voted for. Like it's like glaring where I live. And so it's
Right.
interesting, but like I am an atheist, and I will be very honest with people. Like, I don't believe in God. I don't believe in
Right.
these things, but I don't care what you believe. You
Right.
believe what you want, as long as there's mutual respect and we are able to like
Right.
come together to understand, like, if that makes you, I understand religion. I think religion is very similar to mental health. I think that what religion was established to do is very parallel to what I'm trying to do in my life. It is get people in a good headspace. It's understanding the hard challenges in life. It is understanding the things that we sometimes as humans, our brains just can't process. And it's helping us to process the hard stuff, you know? So I understand. I think we
Right.
all just need to come from like a space of mutual respect. And honestly, I come back to trauma because it's like I was going to say this earlier. My mom said to me, I said, there's a book that talks about not carrying generational trauma anymore. And I was like, Mom, I am sick of carrying your trauma. And she was like, Mom, Erin, what do you mean? I don't have trauma. I was like, Mom, you were parentless at the time you were 17. You've been married to an alcoholic your entire adult life. What do you mean you immigrated from another country like when you were a kid? What do you mean no trauma? And then I taught her trauma responses, and she came back to me. She was staying with me, and she came back the next day, and she goes, "Oh my God, Erin, my whole life is a trauma response. I realized every single thing I am doing is a trauma response." And I was like, if the world just understood it, we would be at such a better space. But we struggle to have those hard conversations to talk about the
Yeah.
religion or the
Yeah.
politics because it's so goddamn triggering because we all have our own lived experiences and our own little trauma responses. And with between that and algorithms, we've kind of gotten into these little bubbles of like, my reality is the only reality I can process. I don't know. I don't know
But
how
we
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 come at
but
it.
we also have gotten out of the fact that, you know, we have detached ourselves from nature too as well. You know, as
Mm-hmm.
a group of people, we have detached ourselves from nature because, you know, we have allowed, like you said, the trauma has been there, right? And the one thing that a lot of people will count on is trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Like your subconscious is the one means that can change your life, right? That's the one thing that holds people back, and that's the one thing that
Mm-hmm.
elevates people, is that
Mm-hmm.
people cannot understand how to control their subconscious mind. Not so much about, you know, like you said earlier, trauma don't always be thinking, you don't always think about it, just that something may reacted, but it's because subconsciously it's in there, because most people don't understand how to control their subconscious thoughts, and your
It's not
subconscious
even
thoughts is
just
your
that it's
power.
in there, but it's
But
not
hold
just that
on for a
it's in
second. Let me
there.
let me let me make let me
Okay,
make my
okay.
point,
Okay, okay.
because what happens is it is in there, and I think for me, like I said, just my example, because the reason why I'm saying that subconsciously it's in there, because if it wasn't in there, then if it wasn't, you know, just to write on the fact, then it wouldn't be able to be pulled up if it wasn't in your subconscious. Like
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
most of us may not have the trauma in our head just replaying, but if another emotion can trigger you to relive that trauma, then it's in your subconscious. The point
mm-hmm,
is that whenever we've fallen away from the fact of how to learn how to control our subconscious. That's where the balance of spirituality comes in at. Not religion, but spirituality, because that's how you get to the place of controlling your subconscious. That's the only way that you get to the place where you can start seeing behind the veil.
mm-hmm,
Long as we are always in our trauma phase or our trauma recognition. If we in trauma recognition, that means that if we can see the trauma, then we should be able to see how to undo the
mm-hmm,
trauma. The point
mm-hmm.
is that we believe in the trauma more than we believe in the undo. And how do we do that? Because it's flesh. It's a feeling. The trauma brings about the feeling. It ain't just a thought. The body can't tell the difference between whether you really experience something versus
Yes.
what you just thinking
Mm-hmm,
about. It can't tell the difference. Most people are overweight not because of the way they eat, it's because of the way they think. They got a whole bunch of
yep.
cortisol
Yep.
sitting up in their body. right?
Yep.
Because they won't take the opportunity to learn the spiritual base, and that's paying attention to nature. People don't have to believe in a religion to understand spirituality. If you don't understand, or maybe people don't have that little voice inside their head that talk. Maybe people can't read inside their head. They can only read out loud. But if a person has that little thought, or you can hear that little thing in your head that can read or can know every word to a song, even though you can't repeat it, but it knows everything in there, that helps you to understand that you have a spiritual base to your flesh. So when people don't explore the spiritual base, it's very hard for them to see their way out of the wet paper bag. It's a balance. There's a yin and
You
yang.
say,
There's a left and right. There's a up and down.
yep,
It's a
yep,
balance. And if you don't
pendulum.
understand the
Mhm.
balance, you're not going to get it. You got to get to the balance. If you only are focused on just the one part of your body, that's the physical part, your emotions, your
Yeah.
trauma, how you feel. If you only worried about those parts and that makes your decision making, you're going to always be trapped in your trauma. But the moment you start to see things from a spiritual standpoint, like, hold on for a second, what is my purpose here? How many of us live based on our gift and talents? How many people understand a way of living? How many people understand the balance of nature? How many people even understand how to eat? It's some people that don't even know how to wipe themselves still. They still got skid marks. There's no way that you should be an adult with a skid mark. Like, people still don't know that part. So, there's still women don't know their ovulation. They still don't know that, it's a couple of weeks in there where you can do what you want and you ain't got to worry about all that other stuff, but they don't even know that. Right? So what I'm saying to you is that when we don't take the time to get to know the inside of us, what is our
Mhm.
purpose? Who are we? That's our
Mhm.
spiritual base. When we don't learn that, then our trauma always gonna take over. Our
Mhm.
subconscious is always going to keep reliving that thing, and you're going to keep getting triggered. The people who got triggered over this election is crazy. What I'm saying, they're not crazy, but the thought process of an election triggering you is crazy to me when you ain't never got nothing from nobody. And I'm still trying to figure out who gave you anything. Like,
Yeah,
I've been living this, what I've been living all my life, and nobody that you voted for gave you nothing. So
nothing.
I'm still trying to figure out what you triggered about. As a group of people, wait, hold on for a second. As a person, people, take race out of it, take color out of it, take all that. Whatever your financial bracket is, you have way more people related to you than you than you may not know, right? If
Mhm.
any of you are below a certain level financially, you are all in the same boat.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
hate to break it to you. Yeah, okay, yeah. Some of y'all white, some of y'all Asian, some of y'all Mexican, some of y'all black. I get it. Some of y'all tall, some of y'all short, some of y'all big, some of y'all skinny. I get it. Everybody. Oh, some of y'all voted for this person, didn't vote for that person. I get it. I get all of that. But at the end of the day, guess where we all at?
Same
So
place.
if you're triggered by that, that's where I'm saying you still don't get the picture. You still have it because of your spiritual base. It doesn't matter what you believe in. It just matters about what's facts. A bird don't
I
believe in
think
us, but it doesn't stop it from flying. Listen, a bird don't believe in us,
I
but it don't stop it from flying. I'm
okay,
sorry.
I think you and I are doing similar stuff. Like, I don't spiritual is not like my thing, but I definitely can see the parallels of what you're talking about. And so if I was to
Gotcha.
kind of put in, so I'm going to talk about a trauma brain for a minute, and teach a little bit about the brain to anybody who's listening. And if you don't know this, then awesome. If you have, like, your thoughts enter your brainstem, right? And your fight, flight, freeze, some people believe in fawn, some people don't, part of your brain. So if you have a hard thought that goes in there that feels life threatening,
Right.
you might react in
Right.
that way. My whole goal in my program is really getting people to that frontal lobe, which I think is very much similar to
Mm.
what you're saying, is a space of being spiritual, is having that deeper understanding of yourself. So I will finish the brain. So if your thoughts kind of get stuck somewhere in this middle section, this is where you tend to be very emotionally reactive. You tend to blame other people. It's hard to take accountability. You accuse people of things. You're crying, whatever. When we can get our thoughts to that frontal lobe, if we can slow down our thoughts, get to that frontal lobe, that's where we're more logical, practical, reasonable. Your frontal lobe doesn't finish developing till you're 25, although they say if you have a neurodivergent brain, you can tack on another decade. I don't feel like I figured out that frontal lobe business until I was like 35 myself. But now that I feel it and I recognize it, I can get there and I understand the need to like process, and I can identify like when I'm in different stages in my brain, things like that.
Gotcha.
So talking about trauma and this sort of like triggering thing, I think my interpretation of our election is very much a parallel to when I was a teacher. I was teaching this kid. He was in 7th grade at the time, and he kept having like toddler type emotional reactions to things where, like I would look over and he is literally in the fetal position in the corner of my classroom. And I'm like, I don't know what to do, how to help this kid. So I brought dad in finally, and he was like, well, his mom died when he was 4. And so what ends up happening is when he gets stressed, when he gets any of those really hard emotions, he gets angry, he feels sad, he basically goes back to that space of where he felt when his mom passed away when he was 4. And he literally, like he is not cognitively online when those moments are happening. He is here in that fight, flight, freeze space, and he is in a corner in the fetal position like a 4-year-old. Like he almost, like his psyche kind of sees himself in that way, right? So I think a lot of people who are feeling trauma in our society right now, I mean, I know for me as a woman, I am very triggered because I have a lot of like white cowboy dudes around me who, with their Trump flags on their bumpers, who are very misogynistic and will tell you are a second-class woman as second-class citizen as a woman. Outwardly, they will say these things to you. It's very triggering for me because I grew up in a very patriarchal type household where my dad was the end all be all. And for me, sometimes I'm like, I'll be damned if you're going to tell me how to think and feel, man. Like, I'm very triggered as a woman right now because of how I was raised. So it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with Trump. But my dad very much like reminds me of Trump in that way. And I have a very emotional reaction to the way Trump is very much a rich white man who loves his rich white man privileges, because it reminds me so much of my father that I'm like, oh my God, no, that is awful for our country because that is not okay, And so I do think like I don't know. I personally, and again, I am such an empath to the max that I understand trauma is part of what we need in this situation for some people to get to a space where they can be part of that solution. But I do think it's important for us to recognize, I think a lot of people are very much in that fight, flight, freeze part of their brains right now. Like they're not cognitively online. I sit in meetings and people are like, I can't even function and say a sentence that makes sense right now that's coherent. And I'm like, I know you're not here. You're not cognitively online because we're terrified and we're sitting here in a different part of our brain figuring out, is the kid. I personally worry about the kids that are immigrants that I have taught that I know are not here potentially legally. And what does that mean for their future? And they didn't wish this. They didn't do anything to put themselves in this position. And here they are potentially having their entire lives completely narrated by somebody else, So that's where I go. And I have that trauma for them on their own, for their behalf. I feel that trauma in my being. So I don't know. I mean, I guess to go back to it, I don't think emotions are the end all be all for all the things, but I do understand why we are very emotional right now. I think we are a lot of us are very much in that space right here where we can't get cognitively online,
But that goes back to what I was saying earlier, is because most people are looking for the outside to help themselves. We all have been faced with a trauma that another person can relate to. But like we said earlier, there are people who feel like they're the only ones going through it. The problem with the relation of the trauma that people go through is that, okay, but so before I say that, let's just say this. So whatever the frontal lobe is another word where they would call that the third eye, right?
Mhm.
In a more spiritual space, they would call that the third eye. When they say when your third eye is awakened, right? You're
Mhm.
able to see things for what they are, not for what they seem to be. And
Mhm.
I think that for the most part, if we understand that everything that's going on out here in this world that we feel like can trigger us, we don't accept the fact that that controls us. So, as much as we want to give validation to the things that trigger us, right? Whether it be like you were saying, there are people that were here that are and fearful of being deported, even though they wasn't here to cause no drama, but they probably slid in here some other kind of way, and they've been here for a while. But because of these other people coming through here, then but the only reason why people have been able to come through here and mess it up for them is because they were allowed to be. So a lot of times the anger is misplaced, right?
Mhm.
There are people, that's why I say we don't pay attention to the examples that we give. And most people are mad at Trump because of the fact that people are about to be deported, but they're not mad at the Biden administration for allowing all these people to come over here. That's going to mess it up for the people that were already here that were good. But we don't hear that from people. That's why for me, when you said earlier, it was very hard for you to tell who I vote for, because on my platform it's very bipartisan, because I've always been a firm advocate that no matter what side of the wing that you vote for, it's still the same bird. And not only that, there's no one that ever gave us anything. We've had to figure out a way to get it ourselves. We
And
still
both
looking
sides
for a
are
handout. But
manipulating the crap out of us. Both sides are manipulating
and
us.
if you
And that's
and
ugly and
if you
gross in of
but once
itself.
you but
Hmm.
once you know that, it you can't unknow it. So
Hmm.
if you still, and that goes back to the trigger thing. If these things are still triggering you, then they control you. My
Hmm.
thing is that how do you get out of having not to worry about who does? Because you never hear the Asian Americans up in any type of uproar or anything. They got two towns that they have just to themselves in major cities and all these other things, but you never hear about them having to worry about who gonna do this and who gonna do that. Y'all gonna give me this. They don't care because they keep putting their same positions in place. I'm gonna do this, set this up, and make sure that my family is good. And for us, that's not our goal. We still are upset about stuff.
Hmm.
We
Hmm.
still finding the means to be upset. We're still finding the means to be, oh my God, I can't take it. We finding the means to blame something on somebody else versus us saying to ourselves, hey,
Taking
look, okay,
ownership.
they've been playing with us this whole time. Yes, taking ownership for what we've allowed. Like, okay, when are you gonna
What can I
take it back?
control?
We can't take it back, can we? Yeah. When you said earlier, I don't know what we could do to get. I'm saying, well, to me personally, I know exactly what we can do. I just don't
Yeah,
think
but
people would do it because they're gonna have to take accountability. In order
that's
for
the
people to get
thing.
to the space that you want, you got to take accountability. All right. It's
I know
either one
what
or
to
two
do.
things. Your childhood trauma is either your fault or it wasn't. Now you're gonna have to
Yep.
take accountability for which part of it that it was.
Hmm.
Take accountability if it was not your fault. And it's easier said than done, right? Because people are given medicine for what I'm saying in order for them to deal with this.
Yeah.
And those who are not,
100%.
they're going to find the harder drugs that they can to get rid of it and numb it and not to think about it. But I wanna be completely honest and be completely clear is that no matter how we justify our traumas and our emotional triggers, as long as we don't have the balance of spiritual and flesh, we're going to always fall for the trick. And we're going to
Mhm.
look for blaming people, and we're not going to look for where it's at. Because that's what I'm saying. If anybody is mad at Trump for getting deported, they should definitely be mad at the Biden Harris administration for letting all these people in here.
I think, well, and I
Like
think the
these people, these
challenge,
people, these people shouldn't have been in here because they messing it up
uh,
for the good
yeah,
people that's already here. It's their
yeah,
fault. These
yeah. I
people
mean, you
that's
got to
going to the
be,
Senate meetings, their parents. Look, Aaron, it's flooded.
uh-huh.
It's
You got to
parents
be mad at the
upon
person
parents.
who, you got to be mad at the person who shit the bed, right? I understand. You can't just
You
be mad at the
got to
person who's
be
saying, clean up the
mad.
shit out of the bed. I get it. But
No,
I
and
think
that's what
that
we're
people are
doing. We get
concerned.
mad. But this is what we do. We get mad at the person that tells us to clean up. Earlier when
100%.
you was talking and you said this thing about being a parent, right? You was like, yo, I come in, don't clean up. I tell you 3 or 4 times to clean up and you don't do it and make me feel a certain way. That is the exact thing that people are mad at. They're mad at the person that is saying that, not looking at the person saying, hey, I'm telling you to clean up because one, you don't have to worry about the toys. I bought the toys for you. You don't have to worry about the house that you're living in that's messed up because I pay for that. You don't have to worry about the lights being on so you can see how to play and mess up this house because I take care of that. Like people don't see that part. Right? That's the same thing they're doing with the current administration. They're looking at this person that's saying, hey, we need to clean up the house. We need to make sure that this, that, and the third. They're upset. And
But
but
I
they
think they're
didn't want the
upset
house
by the.
clean. They didn't want the house clean when it was messy. They
I
lived in
don't
the
think
mess.
they'll. I think they're
Come on,
concerned
Aaron.
about
You know they
the.
did. You know they
I
did.
do, I
You
do.
trying you
Okay,
trying to figure it
listen,
out, but let's be
No.
honest. Let's be honest. They stayed in the they lived in the shit, in the bed. They
Okay, but
slept in. They
also wait.
found a way to sleep around it. Let's be honest, Aaron. Everybody found a way to sleep around it because if we really knew good people that were over here and they may not have supposed to been over here, then our job was to stand up for them. We should have been yelling at this current administration as much as the other side was to, hey, don't let all these people in. You messing it up for my people over here. But did we think about that? No. This is what we thought. We only thought about ourselves as if we look at as United States citizens. For anybody that's feeling sympathetic for the people that may be deported, how can you really sit up here and be sympathetic? Not you. I'm just talking about people in general. When you did nothing to fight against the people that came over here that made it back for these people. You did nothing. You sat back and you just allowed it to happen. And now that the person, your parent, has come home from a work trip or wherever they've been and say, yo, listen, you got to clean this house up. Now everybody's mad. Now they worried about the people that was over here that did. Listen, then why wouldn't you guys go into the lobby and why wouldn't you guys go into the
But
Senate? Why all the parents? Why the teachers? Why they get together and say, hey, y'all, listen, all my people that's been here, right? That I know y'all immigrants. I know y'all slid in here some type of way. Y'all are great people. This is what we're gonna do. We're gonna all go up here. We're gonna get all the U.S. citizens that we know that like y'all. That we're gonna go up here. We're gonna go to Senate. We're gonna tell them to stop letting so many people over here because it's messing it up for y'all. We want them to not do that. They give all these people money, and that's what I was saying to you, Aaron. Yeah, the Venezuelan gangs may not have been a problem in your area, but that had nothing to do with the $9,000 and $10,000 cars that they were getting, the food stamps that they were getting, the housing vouchers, the traveling vouchers that they was getting, with regular people that been there all their lives couldn't get these benefits. When the people from Hawaii got $700 for their houses being destroyed, they got $700, Aaron, and there are people over here that got $9,000 and $10,000. Yeah, I guess maybe in some areas the Venezuelan gangs ain't causing no ruckus, but I promise you this: they not worried about no money. But the taxpayers' money is who they're spending. So what I'm saying to you is that even the good, hard-working immigrants that been here, that is upset, and the people that's upset for them, y'all should have been upset when they was letting all these people come over here as well, too, is all I'm saying. Let's not be hypocrites, right? We can't get mad at the person that came home and told you to clean up your house. Why you let it get messy?
yeah,
That's all I'm saying. We accountability. That's what I'm saying, Aaron. What it's going to take is accountability. If people want that change, if they're looking for, you
it's
gotta take accountability,
it's
and
hard
it's
for me
our
though.
fault.
I agree, and I hear you. And it's hard for me though. We talk about like on the ground data versus what we hear in the news. And I'm
Right,
on the ground. I'm in schools. The same school that I was in the school shooting. I also had an 8th grader who showed
right.
up at my door, who was 8 months pregnant with her uncle's baby, and they fled from Mexico. She didn't speak a lick of English. And they were asylum seekers. So while I hear you, I also am I'm in the industry of humanity, and these are babies, you know. And I think that people who are worried about the Trump administration and cleaning up the bed, I think are really concerned about how we talk about people and we don't acknowledge their humanity. And I think there's a lot of fear that in the process, their own humanity and their own human rights will be denied and will be, not taken seriously. And again, I go back to this baby didn't ask for these things, you know?
No, you're right about that. But here's where we can come into play. Whenever people are thinking about nonprofit and organizations and stuff like that, now is the time for people to get together and start forming these alliances so you can protect the people that you feel like belong to stay here. Because it's going to take you as citizens to vouch for certain groups of people, so they will get skipped over, so to speak. The one thing about religion is that what we most, even though those of us that don't follow it, is that we always find a metaphor into our life, right? We always think about the time where they said that the spirit was coming through to kill all the firstborn. If you had marked your door with blood, that it would skip you. But the reason why people had to mark their door with blood is because everybody had to believe it in order for it to be a thing that it really happened. Now, whether the blood on the door really worked or not, it really didn't matter. It's because everybody came together that believed it, especially for people who had a family. So this is where it comes into play for the people who are here. If they're really worried about their people that it may be deported, and the little girl that you're talking about, because it's 80,000 children that are missing right now out of the 800,000 that came through of the 10 million people that came in here. So it's 80,000 children that are missing right now. So trust me, I'm one of the people that's advocating for children to be protected. The one thing about it, some of these children are being held up with some of these people that need to be getting up out of here. The point is that we as a group of people, as Americans, are going to now have to start putting our voice where our mouth is. And I know it's two different things, because people talk this, I feel bad, all these people gonna go, but you're not talking about, okay, now here's what we can do to try to
Where's
help
the
the people
action?
that we
There's
care about.
always so much talk, but no action.
Here's the action plan. Now we got a couple of months before January come into play. Now, when they get here, we need to have in this area, these are all the people we know that these groups of people, we know they're good. I need to find out a way where I can either sponsor these group of people. We can find this nonprofit organization to sponsor these people to say, hey, these people are good people. We vetted them. We know who they are. Here's all the information. You can check them out. They've been good. They have not gotten any trouble. Here's the thing. So we can vouch for them. But now, if nobody vouches for them, and they, like you saying, Aaron, they be sitting up here blaming Trump, but not getting together with other people like you who feel this way and saying, okay, guys, here's our chance. Let's do something for these people that we feel in a way about. Not just blame Fan for coming to clean the house up, because he said the shit happened from the person who had the house before him. This is the reason why we are in fear of the people that we care about, that has been here for a while, that are great people from these countries that have been, the Panamas, the Guatemalans, all the people that we know, the Spanish-speaking people that are here. Like we listen, y'all, the Haitians that are here, listen, y'all. We know what y'all been going through over there where y'all from. Trust me. And we got to figure out a way to get the people that we know to stay here. And that's where it comes into us making a plan. But if we don't do it, and we just keep talking about Trump and them, then nah. Because the one thing that we found out about him is that, if you vouch for people, you can vouch for them? I bet. Then we'll let that fly. But it's a bunch of people here that ain't got nobody to vouch for them. And them kids need to be protected first and foremost. They need to get them adults out of here. These kids got to be protected. And if the kids are with parents, they need to be with their parents. And I feel like kids shouldn't be separated from their parents as well either. You know what I'm saying? These kids need to be protected. Children need to be protected by all means necessary. I'm a big advocate for that. I don't care about none of that other stuff people talking about. Kids need to be protected at all means, by any means necessary. And in order for us to really be, as Americans, as U.S. citizens, to really make a difference, it's time for action against it. So if y'all got people,
Action.
that y'all adore, that's from these countries that are here, it's time for the U.S. citizens to vouch for them. Find ways that we could sponsor them, vouch for them, do whatever we can to try to help them miss the deportation situation that's coming through, so they can only get the people who they need to get. And that's how we gonna have to go about it. Because if we do not, we cannot blame the person that smelled the shit and said clean it up. We can't blame them. If we not willing, if we not willing to clean it up, we can't blame the person who's now in charge of the house.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel no shame. Shame is not something I literally feel in my being. So I'm very like open and honest about all the things. And I will always tell people about the crap in life and traumas and whatever. And my husband's always like, stop telling everybody all our dirty laundry. I'm like, well, if you don't want people to know, then you shouldn't put it out there. Like, if you don't want people to know the things that you said that were mean, don't say the mean things. I mean, I agree 100%. You shouldn't blame the people who are calling you out on your poor behavior. You should make sure that we are behaving better from the get-go. And I think, again, it's still, this conversation comes down to what is true, though. I mean, I have heard that the Biden administration has done a lot of things for our immigration challenges, but it's really hard to know what is reality and what's truth and what is not. I mean, it depends on what news source you hear or listen to, depending on, if they're saying Biden's administration did do this or didn't do this, and what Trump's administration will do or won't do. It's like all very, and I think it always comes back to we have to act in ways that we can control. I can't control what Trump's going to do moving forward, but I know I can be part of the solution. And I think that's one of the things that's it's really frustrating for me personally is I'm a doer. I'm a problem solver to the max. And it's really hard to be around people who just want to bitch and complain online. And that's it. That's as far as it goes.
And that's it.
Like,
and you cannot, you gotta put some action into it, because that's what he's doing. Like, that's the part that I said, that people are looking at the Biden administration. Like you said, you heard that they did some things to help. Well, if they did, then the shit would not be there for somebody else to come in and have to clean up. That's the only thing. It's one of those things where it's like, okay, how are we going to work together now? Now we have another means of finding another purpose or reason to work together. Let's be an advocate for the people that we care about that have been here, who may get caught up in this thing. Let's figure out how to become advocates for them. That's the one thing that nobody is talking about. People will keep talking about a person that they're going to blame for it versus them saying, okay, how much more are we not going to see, like the light that's flashing, right? We don't see the light that's flashing. And
I think the other layer to it as well is like, how are you going to utilize your privilege to mobilize society? Because to me, I think about, like, as I'm listening to you, I'm like, yeah, we should have some white people who are bosses really make sure that they're sponsoring the people that they that work for them, that are really on the right track and doing good, right? And so, like, white bosses who are out there, whatever bosses that are out there, we need to make sure that we're really using our privileges in a way that is getting the entire country into a better place. And I think that, we all have different privileges, right? Like, I think I always talk about, my husband grew up in redneck area, and he has redneck privilege. I go into like their local bar or whatever, and they're like, oh, she's a stuck up little white girl, versus like they talk to him and they're like, what's up? And like, whatever. Like, we all have different privileges to access different communities of people, right? And we need to make sure that whatever our privilege is, right? You have Black man privilege. I know that sometimes it doesn't feel that way, but I have white woman privilege. It is what it is. We need to make sure that within our communities, within our structures, within our systems, we are using our privilege for action for our people, period. At the end of the day, that's all we can control. It's all we can do. But talking is never going to be enough.
It's never going to be enough. But having conversations like this is where we start. So before we get out of here, I want to say this to all the people that jumped on, because there was a bunch of people that jumped off and on. I definitely appreciated y'all for coming on. I know we started a little late. I had technical difficulty. My camera froze a bunch of times. Now it seemed like we're okay.
We survived
But
it.
we make it through, right? We make it through. And that's what happens with perseverance, right? You got to make it through. I hope tonight's show was an example of that on all different levels, right? Not just the fact of having the communication between me and Aaron, but the fact that we could even make it through technical difficulties and still pull out the show and still in the end, still be able to have what we started out to do. And I think that's a great example for a lot of you guys out there that was listening to this conversation tonight and it's going to listen to the playback to kind of take away. Accountability means everything. It means everything in life and any relationship that you in. Accountability is the most important part. If you can't see your faults and understand that you can change them, it's not just who you are. If you can't accept who you are as a person, then how can you expect someone else to? So many of us, we walk around and we want everybody to just accept us for who we are, but we are not taking accountability for who we are. Some people are just assholes. If you want somebody to accept you as such, then you got to accept the fact that they're going to call you that. And you can't be upset with the fact that they call you that if you take accountability for the fact that you are that. So there always comes a time in life where we always have to take accountability. And I think from the conversation that me and Aaron had tonight, you guys can take away from anything is that we may have not come up with the definite solution in this conversation tonight because of the way that we communicated, but I bet y'all know one thing. In order for us to get to that space is that we have to take accountability. You guys know people out there that would be affected by this deportation coming up. That's really great people. You have to start looking up information now to how to advocate for them. You have to look out, find ways that you could probably sponsor them and get them into some situations right now while the current administration is still in power. They're in power to January 20th. So for those of you guys that believed in administration and that's in there right now, you felt like they did a whole lot and all that, now's your time to get to them before the new one takes office and figure some things out for the people that you care about. So Aaron, before we leave, is there anything else you want to leave the people with real quick?
Well, I was gonna say, did you know the name of my nonprofit earlier? You said undo a couple of times. Did you know that was the name of my nonprofit?
No, I didn't. That's
You were
crazy.
talking
But I
about
want you
mental
to,
health stuff, and you were like, we have to undo these things. And I was like, yeah, we do.
it's so dope.
So if you're okay with that, I'd love to put a quick plug. If you're listening, check us out,
Yeah, definitely.
undumindset.org. We have our own podcast called Undo Unplugged, and we talk about all things mental health, and we talk about different tangible skills and tools to really get to that frontal lobe, you know?
That's so dope. And I want everybody to make sure that y'all follow Erin too, because as y'all can see tonight, she has a lot of great insight too. And she's also aware of taking accountability because even, talking about her marriage and stuff like that, being able to float through that and seeing the end like we did today with me having technical difficulty and still making it to the end of the show. That's metaphoric for a lot of things in life. Like she talked about, she completely glanced through it, but it was enough for you guys to kind of understand why her profit or her organization is about helping people with mental health, or and you got to think about it, y'all. There's so much, and she's been an educator, or she still is an educator, not been one, but she's and then coming at it from that perspective too, being able to see children or people, let's just say people too, because being around other teachers and stuff and all that other stuff, a lot of people are going through trauma, no matter what the age difference is. So please, y'all, I want y'all to follow Erin. I want y'all to, reach out to her, get to know more about her organization, check up on her podcast. Some of you guys that are watching, you know that you're dealing with certain things, trauma. If you want to talk about it, please contact her and see if you guys could be a guest on her platform. I think as many people who can recognize mental health and trauma in their life and they can find people to talk to, please do.
Mm-hmm.
Because the one thing that Aaron said today that I felt like was very important was about the young person that had these thoughts about suicide.
Mm-hmm. You're not
And the
alone.
one thing that she said that she made sense was let them know that that's a real human experience that a lot of people deal with. You're not alone in that. We don't want you to jump off the ledge, but we want you to know that the feeling of jumping off the ledge, there's a lot of people who are very,
It's
very
human.
successful at some point in their life. They wanted to jump off the ledge too.
Mhm.
So we have to be responsible for those things once we know it. So thank you so much for jumping on with me, Aaron.
Thank you.
Thank you
This has been
guys
a
so much.
pleasure.
Yes. And so hold on, don't go nowhere, but we're gonna end the stream right now. To all of y'all that's watching, y'all know what to do. Make sure y'all continue to watch us. We have a few more shows going into December, and then we'll be starting up with season 3 coming in December. January. And then we'll get into more. We're gonna have a lot more in-depth conversations. We're gonna keep moving up the ladder. I'm getting more into the space and making sure y'all get this information because, like she said today, how do we get it? And I've been following different things, different Senate meetings and stuff like that, because that's where all the information is. Because you got to think about it. These things that's coming into law and all that, and all these things that we want, they got to go through the Senate first. So for us to understand what's going on out here in the world, we got to figure it out from your judges to everything. You guys got to figure it out. These people don't campaign. You guys just go down and start picking in a bubble when it's time to vote. You don't even know who you're voting for but that's where they at. They don't campaign, but they got to answer some questions. So I want all of us to get into the state of learning how to investigate. So until next week, y'all know what to do. Stay fly out there. And just remember, if you don't believe in yourself, nobody else will. Right? So until next week, peace.